Greetings, I am Pillar Nexus, the Ancient Gladiator, with more Player Nexus, discussing the rules and strategies for Root, a game of Woodland Might and Right. This multiplayer strategy game has many expansions for more factions and other options and helpful things, but today we're just going to discuss the base game. The goal of the game is to reach 30 points on the victory point track, or accomplish a dominance card, which can only be done by abandoning the victory point track at 10 points and playing the card. If you're playing as a Vagabond, you can use the dominance card to form a coalition with the player in last place, so that if they win, so do you. Before anything else, the game is set up. The available items for crafting are placed up here. The deck is shuffled and 3 cards are dealt to each player. The ruins are placed on these spots marked R. If the Vagabond is going to be played, then the ruins items are mixed up and randomly placed underneath each one. The game comes with some blank tokens that, serving no other use that I'm aware of, I used to put into blank building spaces as a way of showing that, hey, there's a place where you can build a building. Otherwise, it's sometimes a little bit hard to see. After general setup is taken care of, we go to faction-based setup. So in alphabetical order, each faction will set up according to their faction's rules. So A is Marquis de Cat. They will set it first. Then the Erie Dynasties, and then the Alliance, and then the Vagabond. For the first faction to set up, Marquis de Cat, what you are trying to do is construct buildings. To do that, you will need wood. To do that, you will need sawmills. So for the setup, you will have your keep, a little round token, in any corner clearing. Let's choose up here. You will have a warrior. Every little wooden pawn except for Vagabonds is a warrior. In every clearing except the opposite corner. You'll have one each of sawmills, recruiters, and workshops to place in the starting clearing and the adjacent ones, wherever there's an open spot. What each of them do is the sawmill, at the start of your turn, you'll get a wood token in that clearing per sawmill. Recruiters, when you go to recruit, you add a warrior at every clearing that has a recruiter. And when you go to craft, you'll use your workshops for crafting. So the way crafting works is you need to have your crafting capabilities at the clearance shown. So let's say I wanted to craft this card. It has 2 rabbit icons. So I would need this workshop plus a workshop here or down here to be able to build it. It is done before any actions are taken during the daylight phase. Ultimately, being able to build buildings gets you more and more points. That is how you win by points for the cats. Next in setup is Erie Dynasties. What you will do with them is decide on a leader. They give you a special ability And they also give you loyal viziers, which help you with your actions as part of the decree. Every turn you will have to add a card to the decree, and if you're ever at a point in the decree where you cannot take the action because there are no cards that match and allow you to do that action, everything falls apart. So the longer you can go before things fall apart, the better. But ultimately, with their setup, it starts in an empty clearing opposite of someone else's starting clearing. Oop. You can kind of see the birds here. We'll start with 6 warriors and a roost. Roosts are where they do their crafting, although they're not as much of a fan of crafting as any other faction. If you ever have no roosts, then at the start of your turn you'll have a roosted 3 warriors in a clearing with the fewest. But once you've done that, you'll have your leader, you'll flip your board, fill it with roosts, and ultimately what you're trying to do during the game is score points every turn by having more and more roosts built. In order to do that, you have to rule the location. In order to build any building in a clearing, you have to rule the location. You rule as long as you have more at that location than anyone else. Rule is also important for movement. You can only move from or to a clearing that you rule. Normally nobody rules in a tie. The birds of the Eerie Dynasties rule in a tie. And also, having more roosts out means more cards. Since you're having to spend cards every turn, you want to get up to this point or up to this point as soon as possible, so you have more cards to work with. Because, as I've said elsewhere, being at a disadvantage on cards absolutely sucks. After the Eerie Dynasties is the Woodland Alliance. Pretty simple setup. You just flip your board over and then draw 3 cards to go into your supporters slot. You are limited to 5 supporters if you don't have any bases out. Oh yeah, your bases will then go onto your board for use later. Ultimately, what you're trying to do as the Alliance is spread sympathy, where you will take a number of supporters listed on the sympathy track to place that token. You can only place it in a token, or in a clearing, if that clearing does not already have a sympathy token. And then the cards you need to place it there must be matching. So a quick note, bird cards are wild. Whenever you need to use a card of a certain type, you can use a bird card instead. But anything that specifically calls for bird cards, must use them. So you will spend cards to place your sympathy during birdsong. Sympathy is also how you craft. So there's that. You can add cards from your hand to the supporter stack. But the better way to get cards into your supporter stack is to trigger Outrage. When a player removes sympathy or moves any warriors into a sympathetic clearing, that player must add a matching card from their hand to your supporters. If they can't, then they show you their hand and you draw a card. Add to your supporters. And then eventually you will get officers to do special evening actions. you'll spread sympathy, and then what you'll want to do at some point is revolt. You'll spend 2 supporters matching a sympathetic clearing. Like, let's say, what I have here. Sympathetic mouse clearing. So I will use the mouse and the bird, and then go into revolt. All enemy pieces are removed. If there are any buildings or tokens, those are removed as well. Every time you remove an enemy building or token, you get a point. That's why going after the Marquis de Cat's sawmills is a viable strategy for any faction. The only place you can't place sympathy is their keep. The cat's keep, no one can place any piece there. You have to move in from the side to attack. And you can't expect any sympathy there either. So yeah, you'll spend the supporters to blow everything up, move all the pieces, and you'll get a base. So you have the fox base, the rabbit base, and the mouse base. So it'll take up a building slot. And that'll increase your card draw at the end of the turn. And then you'll get a warrior, little mouse, into your officers track. You want to try to protect your bases where you can, because losing them means discarding supporters of that type plus birds, and half of your officers rounded up. And then if you have no bases on the map, you'll discard your supporters down to 5. It is an interesting faction to play. I have won with them once. They are an interesting challenge. Oh, and their other special thing is, so I've not gone into battle explanation yet. Let's do it now. Under normal circumstances, whoever's attacking will use the high number to inflict casualties on the defending, and then the defending will use the low number to affect that many casualties on the attacking. Your maximum is the number of your warriors that you have there. The Alliance is different. They always take the high number because guerrilla warfare. So in this battle, regardless of whether we're attacking or defending, they're going to lose 1. I'm going to lose 0. But even if I got like a 2 or a 3, I'm still limited to only doing 1 because I only have 1. If you have things that say extra hits for my cards and stuff, you'll do those too. If there are no warriors in a clearing, the buildings are defenseless, you'll get an extra hit no matter what, which will be very helpful in getting those points from destroying those buildings. And finally, for this game, you will set up the Vagabond. You'll have your choice of characters: the Tinker, the Ranger, the Thief, and then the faction, the expansions add even more. There's the Vagabond pack, and I think either Underground or Riverfolk have the extra Vagabonds. Let's see. It's the Riverfolk. Yeah. But I chose Tinker because I like crafting things. That's just how I roll. So you'll take your character. You'll take their starting items, which are listed on the bottom. It starts with an extra boot, a torch, a satchel, and a hammer. Hammers are how the Vagabond craft. Depending on what clearing they're in, every hammer will apply. Then you will place your pawn in any forest, shuffle your quest deck, and draw 3. Each quest is something you can go and do by exhausting certain items and certain clearings. So I need swords or boot and a tea and or boot and satchel. First, yeah. When you complete the quest, you will claim the quest card itself and pick a reward. Drawing cards or getting a point for every quest of that type you've completed already. Personally, I think if you're in serious need of cards, you take the cards for the first quest. Otherwise, you focus on getting the points. Ultimately, what you are doing over the course of the game is building your relationships with various factions. Just start out indifferent. You're trying to aid them by giving them cards matching the clearing that you're in, and getting points that way. You can take items that they've crafted by aiding them. So among the cards are cards that can craft items that give some, gives points to the people making them. But then you can aid those people and take those items for your own sake. The Vagabond is considered a pawn, but not a warrior. Anything that would affect him just hurts his items. Over the course of his turn, the Vagabond's turn, they can refresh items, as long as they're not damaged. They can be flipped back up to be used again. Plus more per T. And they can slip from the forest to a clearing to go do stuff. They can move along paths using their boots. They can battle based on their swords. They can explore using their torches to remove ruin markers and claim new stuff, which then opens up this building spot for the faction who's there, which I'm sure they would greatly appreciate. You can claim a quest using the required ones there. You can use a crossbow to remove a piece in your clearing. Warriors first. You can use hammers to repair or craft. Repair, when items get damaged, they'll go here, and then you can't use them until you repair them. Rest, if in a forest. So after all your actions are done, if you were in a forest, you'll get to repair and refresh all damaged items. Otherwise, you're still running around out here. Sometimes you just have to take care of your stuff. It happens. Drawing a card, +1 per coin stack. Discarding down to 5 cards in hand. And removing items in your satchel down to 6. +2 per bag. So one of the things I like about the Tinker is having, better carrying capacity, the ability to repair and craft things immediately. For the Vagabond, there's a maximum of 2 hammers you can get outside of what you already start with. One is somebody making the hammer and you getting it. The other is getting it from the ruins. Plus you can have one for starting with it as well. So the most you can do with the Vagabond is 3 a 3 clearing item. There is a 4 clearing item in the game. That is a gigantic pain in the butt to make happen. It is impossible to do as a Vagabond, unfortunately. But this is ultimately playing as a hero and going on quests. Or you can be hostile, where you have to exhaust an extra boot until clearings where you're hostile with the faction. But every time you remove a piece that you're hostile with, you can score a point that way. But if you choose to be more heroic than by being allied with them, you can score points for aiding them. So here to summon a villain to others, you get to make the call as the Vagabond. So there's some different ways to kind of experience the game on your first time with it. There's walking the route, which is an extended example of play, which goes over, very detailed how you're going to be setting things up, what cards you're going to start with, and some things that you do just to walk you through how you actually act during the game with your faction. There's also learning to play, which is also helpful with that, and guides you through the basics of the game and such. And it also features the winter map discussion, which is on the back side of this map is an entirely different one, where the clearings are randomized, and it is a little bit trickier to deal with. And finally, there's the Law of Root. It is a very extensive book, including details for setup and all the factions, including the factions of the expansions. And this is how I got spoiled on what's coming in the Marauder expansion, and I'm debating whether or not I want to go for it. Honestly, I'm just kind of happy to get the basic game again, but I'm looking at the Marauders and I'm thinking maybe. There's also variant maps like the winter, or aside from the winter, the lake and mountain map set, hirelings, landmarks, the Exiles and Partisans deck, which switches out completely, is an entirely different way to play. The Clockwork expansion, which gives you a way to play automated versions of the base game's factions. It looks like there's going to be a Clockwork expansion 2, which will be interesting for seeing what factions are going to be affected by that one. But this is Root. Root is just a nice, interesting game of having a completely unique faction play experience. The cats you're trying to build and build and build, and having the stuff to build, and protecting your stuff that you've built from being blown up, of course. The birds, you're trying to program like what you're trying to do and where you're eligible to do it. I said before, the birds were wild. Using them on your decree gives you a lot of options, but when the decree fails, it's called turmoil, and when the dynasty goes into turmoil, they lose 1 point for every bird card in the decree. They're already losing 2 for the viziers. Having a lot of bird cards in your decree and still failing is going to hurt even worse. And then finally, the Woodland Alliance having to pull some sneaky stuff and just generally, fly under the radar and keep your opponents guessing, and when you're ready for it, just nail them where it hurts. These are the animals that are tired of this conflict. They are done with this shit. They're gonna rebel and wreck everything. Hell yeah. And then there's just a fun little adventure of the Vagabond who's just doing his own little thing. And It's like, okay, there's a conflict going on. I'm just gonna do whatever. The other factions are pretty interesting too. But yeah, Root's got a lot of interconnection and strategies and interactions and everything. I recommend it. I know this is. I know. I thought it. I said it's not my Pillar List Games thing, but I give this game a big recommendation as a game that is currently available. In fact, they are currently where does it say? I think it's on the back of the box here. 8th printing. They are on the 8th printing of this game. They are keeping it around for quite a while. But yeah, find a copy, play it, try out different things. Of course, every game has the chance to be a different experience by playing a different faction, by trying to craft different cards, by trying to do the dominance, and ultimately, it's just a fun time. So, this has been the Player Nexus episode for Root. When you can, check out the game and stick around for the next episode. I'm going to go over one of my personal favorite games ever, Go. See you next time.